An Italian cast on, or a tubular cast on, or a cast on that's sometimes known as a Kitchener cast on. Whatever you call the cast on, there are several ways to do it. One way is to use the chain cast on and to use that as a provisional cast on. I don't like that way. My favorite way of doing it is similar to longtail. It's a very hard cast on to see and understand, so to make it easier, I'm going to demonstrate using two colors of yarn. In this case, I'm making a slip stitch out of the two colors of yarn. In reality, what you're going to do is you're going to use a single yarn and you're going to do the same procedure. But to practice and learn this cast on, I really recommend either using a self-striping yarn and to start at a color change, or to learn it with two strands of yarn held together. Normally you just put a loop or slip knot on the needle, not a double slip knot. So for our purposes, we are not going to be counting this stitch. If you put a single slip stitch on from a single strand of yarn, folded in half and had a tail and a ball of yarn, the way you would for long tail, you would count this loop as a stitch. You hold the yarns very similar to long tail, but let me show you the difference. When you do a long tail, which is also sometimes known as a slingshot cast on, there's the slingshot shape. See our little slingshot in the V? You work, as I like to say, inside the hand. But when we're doing the Italian cast on, we don't work inside the hand. We work on the bridge that comes from the index finger to the thumb, and we never go into the hand. You're going to see now why two colors of yarn are important. To do this cast on, after putting a slip stitch or just a loop of yarn on your needle, you're going to go under the thumb yarn, pick up a stitch from the index finger yarn, and then bring the yarns to center. And this is very important. This last step is very important. Bring the yarns to center. See, we've cast on one stitch. We have a blue stitch on our needle, so what we're going to do now is go under the blue, pick up a stitch from the white yarn, and again, bring our threads to center. We have a white stitch, which means our next stitch consists of going to the white and to the blue. Blue stitch means we go under the blue to the white. We must always come back to center. If you don't come back to center, you will have a very messy cast on. Under white, pick up blue, under blue, pick up white, in each case coming back to center. Under white, pick up blue, under blue, pick up white. This cast on works best if you work with even numbers. We started with blue, we ended with white. There are some other disadvantages to this cast on at first glance. You'll notice that the stitches are not all aligned or seated on the needle in the same direction. And this could be a problem for you if you're uncomfortable knitting into stitches that are mounted wrong. The way this cast on is used is you turn around to the back, you do a final twist with your yarns, and we're going to use our white yarn to knit with. What would happen is we knit the stitch as it lays, which is to say the stitch is mounted backwards, so instead of knitting into the front loop of the stitch, we're going to knit into the back loop of the stitch. For the next stitch, we're going to bring the yarn forward as if to purl, slip the stitch, bring the yarn back, knit, bring the yarn forward, slip, bring the yarn back, knit, bring the yarn forward, slip, knit, slip, discard. Seems like it should undo, but it won't. We're going to do the same thing we did. We're going to just twist the white around that white yarn, around that stitch, and we're now going to do the same thing on this row. We're going to knit the first stitch, which is now correctly mounted, slip, knit, slip, knit. Oops, this is one of the things you don't want to do. You don't want to use your yarn and let it unravel. It's very difficult to repair. Slip, knit, slip. Once we've done this, you can begin to see, right at the bottom, that our knitting will wrap around. You do 2 more rows of this slip knit pattern, and then you transfer to either a standard stockinette or to a 1x1 ribbing. Can this be used for 2x2 ribbing? Yes, but I'm not going to cover that in this lesson. So if you go to 1x1 ribbing, and you might notice that I wrap my stitch backwards because I am a combination knitter. But for the purposes of this cast on, it doesn't make any difference. By the time we have 3 rows done, you can begin to see that our cast on edge, very clearly there in the blue, is just a wrapped around rolled edge with no clear start except for the cast on yarns, where we started or where we ended. And this kind of a cast on, sometimes called Italian, sometimes called tubular, is one of my favorite cast ons for a neat, stretchy edge. This edge is extremely stretchy, it's very attractive, and it can be very simply done. But the trick to learning it is to use 2 colors of yarn and practice 2 or 3 times till you get the motions down pat. Once you have done that, learning to do it with a single color of yarn will be very easy.